Well, Gerrard slipped and get the bars in here. Rodriguez again. It's a stunning volley.
Hello then, listeners. Welcome back. It's our fourth preview show of the week. The Premier League is almost here, Jack. Can you taste it? Can you taste it?
Well, what does the Premier League taste of? Money?
Money at the moment, yeah. Just coins.
You know when you have coins and you get like a coiny smell on your hand and it smells horrible?
That's how the Premier League smells.
That's how the
right
Premier
now.
League tastes.
That's the deodorant. That's the odour of the Premier League currently. Now, you may have noticed there, listeners, that Keno's gone away. He's on a cruise, Jack. You know.
He is. I mean, that's one way to get over Villa's season last year, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little bit late for him, I feel like, because they've already lost in the Championship. So, I mean, yeah. We're recording for listeners that are confused. All right, there, you struggling? You right?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Go on without
allergic to Championship talk.
Leaving you on your own.
He's allergic to the Championship. We are recording on the 10th of August. So any transfers
forward in
that happen,
time.
Yeah. For anything that happens after the 10th of August, we didn't know about it, so we're sorry. For example, thank you, John Stones, for moving. Thank you, Paul Pogba, for confirming your transfer. Thank you to Everton for signing Ashley Williams. We appreciate all of those transfers after we talk about them. So then, let's crack on then, Jack. Today we're looking at Southampton, Stoke City, Sunderland and Swansea, all the S's. And we'll kick things off with Southampton, who last year, Jack, had a magnificent season, and they are now without Ronald Koeman, which I don't know, it's based on the
I'm not going to touch upon it again. If you missed the last preview show, I did have a rant, shall we say.
Are you over it now? Do you feel like you're over it?
I don't think I'll ever be over it.
Of course, now Southampton, Jack, have a new manager. They've brought in Claude Puel. Yes, is that how you say it?
I mean, it sounds French, doesn't it? It'll do.
We know very little about him, other than he played a lot of matches for Monaco and has recently managed Lille, Lyon, and Nice, as well as a spell at Monaco in sort of the late 90s. But I guess we'll brush over that. But yeah, had a spell at Lille. Remember when Lille were quite good?
I do.
He was there
I like
then.
Lille.
Yeah.
Whenever Lille gets mentioned in the podcast, which is once a season, I mention the fact I had a house party with the owner of Lille Football Club, which was fun.
Have you covered it for the season there?
That's it covered for the season. We've got it in early. I mean, we don't talk about Ligue 1 very much, and I feel like Lille are quite an obscure club that just seem to come up a lot.
Ever since Eden Hazard left, they're not as relevant anymore. But also, as I say, Lyon manager and more recently Nice manager, he's done all right with them. Now the Southampton manager, I don't know what we expect from him. I don't know if anyone really knows that much about him. I don't know what sort of style he plays. I can't say I've watched a lot of Nice. So in terms of his appointment, I think Southampton will be disappointed to see Koeman go. Did a good job. Might feel a little bit aggrieved that he's made the sideways move to Everton. I do think Everton are a bigger club. Would you agree with that? But I do think Southampton are currently in quite a purple patch. So.
Yeah, I feel like for Everton, obviously they've got the new owners in, there's a lot of talk of the money. I feel like that's quite a attractive proposition, the fact you've got a club there that has a lot of money, that is known as being a fairly big club in terms of history, if not in terms of money and kind of recent positions. And it's a club which, I don't want to say has more potential than Southampton, because you look at the Southampton Academy and such, and it always produces great players. But I think for a manager, it probably is a little bit more attractive, the whole Everton kind of project that's going on right now.
Yeah, it should be noted that Nice did finish 4th last year in Ligue 1. They had a very, very good year. So they might be quite sad to see their manager leave after such a good year, to have him pinched by Southampton. With obviously, as I say, Nice they're not one of the big sides in France, I wouldn't say. They're similar to... They're probably... I don't know if they're similar to a Southampton in many ways. When you sort of cross-compare.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. Well, Ben Arthur was there last year, wasn't he? And now he's got his moves to PSG. So they're two sort of... Maybe they're two key factors of last season have both moved on, which is a bit of a shame. But this isn't the Nice roundup, so we'll go on Southampton, who have had some interesting transfer dealings. They've brought in Nathan Redmond from Norwich for around £10 million, I think. Holberg, is it? I don't know if that's how you say it. Højbjerg. Pierre-Emil Højbjerg from Bayern Munich. If we're saying it wrong, listeners, I'm very sorry. He's been brought in as well from Bayern Munich. I think he'll do decent for them. I know a little bit about him. And Alex McCarthy's joined. Yeah, and Alex McCarthy's joined from Crystal Palace, as has Jeremy Pate, interestingly, has joined from Nice, Jack.
Right back. I've heard good things about him at right back, actually.
He's 27, and I think he was one of their stars last season, so he's now being pinched by obviously the manager that's moved, and he's not there. Sorry, they've brought those players in. Decent signings, what they need, do you think? Obviously, they've had quite a few outs. I mean, should we go through the outs first before we talk about it?
Let's do that.
Quite important. Gaston Ramirez has been released. Kelvin Davis has retired. Wanmi has gone to Real Sociedad. Those players didn't really feature too much last year. But Wanyama's gone to Tottenham. Mane's gone to Liverpool. And Graziano Pella has gone to Shandong Lueng. Is that how you'd say it? I think that's right.
Yeah, that is correct.
Thank you. I know you're a bit of a connoisseur of the Asian football.
I love Shandong.
Yeah, so Graziano Pella's moved for about 30 million. So I would say Wanyama, Mane and Pele had a decent year last year for them, and they've all left now. I mean, this seems to be a theme with Southampton.
But they always seem to recruit well, Southampton. Obviously, there's been a bit of a change in the hierarchy this year, and even last year, yes, there was under Koeman. But I always feel like with Southampton, they do a really good job of kind of replacing players.
Yeah.
I must admit, I'm a little bit curious with this window, with the fact they've sold both Mane and Pele, two of their strikers, because of course they did bring in Charlie Austin in January, and they have Shane Long as well in their ranks, and you almost wonder if that kind of move for Charlie Austin last January was a kind of a move made with the anticipation that they probably were going to be losing a striker or two this summer, and I feel like in a lot of situations like this, a team like Southampton might be selling those strikers, and you'd be thinking, "Oh gosh, what's the plan here?" Whereas, yes, they probably do need one more striker, but they're one of the teams that actually had kind of 4 decent Premier League level strikers, I think, in them. Yeah. And they've got some very healthy fees, as you already mentioned, for a lot of these players. I
feel like what's interesting about this now is that the players that are now leaving were the replacements for the players that had left 4 years ago. The cycle.
It is a bit of a conveyor belt, which I'm sure Southampton fans aren't going to necessarily be a fan of. One thing I would say with Southampton is they have done generally a fairly good job of keeping in their younger players over the years. And obviously this year they've brought in Redmond from Norwich. I'm kind of curious to see how he gets on. I've obviously seen a fair bit of him. I'm sure you have as well. Yeah. I feel like for Norwich, he's always looked good for them and always looked like a bit of a spark in the team. But to me, he's never quite looked like a Premier League footballer. And whether or not that's the fact he was playing in very much a championship level side in Norwich, I'm not entirely sure. I'm really excited in some ways to see if he does get a chance, obviously, with some of the departures, to play out on the right-hand side.
Yeah,
and what he might be able to do.
For the money they've spent as well, you expect him to go in there and start most matches for them. I guess you touched on it there, that Southampton, are they going to be disappointed that they keep losing those players? Is that going to stunt them when it comes to progressing upon what they've had? They had for me actually, apart from if Leicester didn't have the season they had, Southampton's season last year was absolutely fantastic. A 6th place finish. Didn't fare too well in the playoff rounds, and obviously didn't go through into the Europa League knockouts, but had a terrific year. And it's going to be very, very difficult. We talk about how competitive the Premier League is. It's going to be very difficult for them to build on that this year. And you hope that as a fan base, they don't get too reactive to that and understand that there's bigger teams in the league that are going to fight a lot harder. You think about they finished 6th. You expect Liverpool, you expect Chelsea to have better years this year, both out of Europe, both with an opportunity to sort of fight for that top 4 again. I hope they don't panic, if they're sort of around the sort of 10th spot and think, do you know what, last year we were better than this. I think Mane and Wanyama are quite big misses, though. I have to say, Mane was the top goal scorer last year, and Wanyama was a bit of a force in the middle. I don't know if they've replaced them as well.
I feel like with Wanyama, they've not really replaced him yet. There's quite a lot of money floating around the Premier League at the moment, and I do wonder if Southampton are going to be one of the teams that do end up spending a lot of money. It's actually been quite interesting, this transfer window, just in general, to kind of see how the money's moved around. Obviously, Balassi now being linked with a move to Everton. To Everton. That money probably could be reinvested in Benteke, for example, and there's kind of this domino effect. It's a bit like a housing chain, it seems, with some of the players moving around, and obviously Southampton have had a lot of these players moved out for a little while, and I'm a little bit concerned perhaps they're cutting it tight to bring in a few more players. I mean, you mentioned the list of players leaving. They've sold 8 players there, maybe only 4 or 5 of them first team players, but they've brought in 4 players who are good. But I feel like if you're finishing 6th in the Premier League, you hope to improve your team year on year rather than be someone taking a move backwards. Not necessarily in terms of the league position, but just when you look at your squad. If you're finishing 6th, you should always really be, at least in my opinion, looking at the next season as a season to kind of use that forward momentum, particularly if you're a team that overachieved to, bring in some new players, bring in the reinforcements. And I'm a little bit concerned that Southampton, they've made some fairly decent money in terms of their kind of dealings out. And I don't know how much of that's necessarily being reinvested just yet.
Yeah, I still think their squad's decent. I think they need to improve it a little bit more. Obviously, with Europa League football this year, they're going to have to try. They need to push on. I think that's the fear, is that you don't want to have sort of a, like. Do you know what could happen though? Southampton could have like an okay Europa League run, but finish around 15th. And that, for the players, I think would be a bit of a step back. Suddenly, for going from finishing 6th to like 15th. I should clarify, Southampton fans, I don't suspect that will happen. But I fear that their squad isn't deep enough to deal with both competitions yet. Especially when you lose some of the players they have done in recent years. I don't know. We'll see. Where do you think they'll finish then, Southampton? How do you think their season will go? Do you think they'll have a bit of European success, maybe?
I feel like they could make it out of the group stage of the Europa League. I think they've got a good squad. My worry is, do they have the depth of a European campaign, and is that going to sidetrack them from the league? Kind of my fear is here that they might be one of those teams who do go on a nice little run in Europe, but perhaps the league kind of suffers somewhat as a result. I know they've got a lot of good young players kind of in their academy, Southampton, so I imagine a lot of them will get a little bit more game time this year, with kind of the stresses, I guess, of both competitions. If I had to hazard a guess, I think really anything in the top half this year and a good European campaign would be great for Southampton. I think realistically, top 8 would be kind of, where they'd like to be this year. You mentioned the fact you got the likes of Chelsea and Liverpool without European campaigns. We might be shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit by kind of stating that both those teams really should be finishing, top 6 this year and, really competing for the European spots.
The expectation of those two teams is certainly higher than like 6th. Or like, I think both teams want to finish higher than 6th, essentially.
Exactly. And obviously not everyone is going to do that. But I do wonder if this year, last year we really saw a shake-up in the Premier League in terms of obviously Leicester finishing top, Southampton finishing 6th. I do have this horrible feeling, and I hope I'm wrong in some ways, except with the exception of Liverpool, in terms of the fact I think that the kind of top 6, top 7 is kind of going to be what you expect this year.
Yeah, more so than last year anyway. Position then, you thinking sort of mid-table-ish from what you're saying?
8th or 9th.
8th, I'll go like 11th. I think their squad might be hampered a little bit, but I really want to see how Ward-Prowse does. I want to see him. Hopefully, I want to see Allardyce use him in the England team in the next couple of years. And I think if he's going to be there, he needs to feature more for Southampton. And hopefully, this season will be the season for him to do just that. So let's move forward then to Stoke City, another team that had. It was a very. I mean, without too much disrespect, it was very Stoke-esque performance
Stoke
last year.
I don't want to say Stoke are boring. But they finished 9th. Is it 8th or 9th? They finished the last 3 years in a row. I think it's 9th. They kind of they're consistently the top half team in the Premier League that, I don't want to say they don't impress me, but they never wow me. They just kind of get the job done and always seem to do good enough.
Yeah, they've literally finished 9th I didn't know that, but yeah, they've finished 9th in the last 3 years, which is. That's not. I mean, the top half in the Premier League for a team like Stoke, I imagine they're still enjoying it, but I guess we've just talked about Southampton there, and we're worried they'll drop off. Stoke might be one of those teams, actually, to break the mould a little bit and to finish a little bit higher. They're another side that obviously don't have European football, so don't have that as a distraction. They can have a settled team all year, and they've brought in Joe Allen, so what more do I need to say on that? Nothing.
I mean, they have. I feel bad for Joe Allen as a transfer. Obviously, I think he's a really good buy for them at 13 million. I feel Liverpool have done very well to get 13 million for a player with 1 year left on his contract.
Yeah.
But I feel like the issue for Joe Allen always was that he wasn't bad enough to be on the Liverpool bench, but he wasn't good enough to start. He kind of fell into this awkward void where there wasn't quite ever a spot for him. I actually think that playing regular first-team football in a stable side, he really could excel, particularly with some of the creative and pacey players around him. You always hear those jokes kind of about the Welsh Perlo, but Joe Allen can actually spread the ball around quite nicely and actually, help a team kind of develop play from deep.
Yeah, I think you look at players like Afellay and Arnautovic and Shaqiri, and I think they'll quite like playing with a Joe Allen, who just keeps it ticking over, keeps it moving. I think he'll suit it more so than like a Charlie Adam who tries a little bit too much, I would say. I think Joe Allen is is a really good signing. I know he only had a year left on his contract, but 30 million, current climate, not too bad. Him and Mbula next to each other, which may well be the partnership. It could be that's quite a good front six for Stoke. I think if you're talking about having Shaqiri one side and Arnautovic the other, striker wise, I still feel like they lack something. I've got to say, I don't know if they'll make a move late doors, but you've got Bojan obviously, but I think Peter Crouch is still technically there. Biram Diouf and Jonathan Walters. I still feel like they maybe need one more in there. Do you feel like that's one where they don't actually have like a recognised sort of powerhouse? I don't know.
I've liked Diouf when he's played for them, actually. I think there was a performance he gave, it might have even been 2 seasons ago now, it might have been against City or United, where he really, really impressed me in that game, kind of playing as part of a trio up front. And it was kind of like, oh, he's that big Premier League, kind of an advanced forward, good in the air, can get the ball down the deck, can maybe score, has some decent pace too. But I do know what you mean about Stoke. For all the creative players they brought in, the likes of Afellay and Shaqiri over the years, they've never gone and splashed money on a big striker. Who was the guy they signed from a Portuguese club recently for like 20 million or something last season? I can't think who it is now.
Striker?
No, he was like an attacking midfielder / winger. I know there's going to be Stoke fans screaming his name, but I didn't see that much of him.
Do you mean Mbula? You mean Mbula from Porto? He's a central midfielder, though.
I do mean Mbula.
Yeah, he's not a winger, though.
But even so, I guess that's still the same problem, though, in terms of they're just spending big money on creative players when they don't necessarily have that 15 goal a season striker that a lot of these teams do have. And perhaps that is an indicator as to perhaps why they finished 9th so many years in a row, whilst there's been other teams kind of push on from the depths of the league and go that one step further.
Yeah, you see like players like Wilfred Boney, who are obviously being made available by City at the moment. You wonder if a man like that could go in there. So obviously you mentioned Biram Diouf. He scored 5 goals last year in 26 appearances. It's not really enough, is it? You need more. You want a sort of a 10 to 15 goal scorer there. And Arnautovic was their top goal scorer last year. But I think I know they've done it 3 times in a row, but I would predict 9th again for Stoke. I'll kick us off.
Can I talk about one more player, please, in this side? Because he's a player I'm actually quite excited to see, and that is Ramadan Sobhi. Now, I don't know if you know a lot about this guy.
Egyptian?
19 years old. He's a bit of a winger. He's been playing for Al Ahly in
a bit of a winger? What does that mean?
Well, he's played out wide in the past.
I think he is a winger
level.
Like, generally, he's a winger.
Well, attacking midfielder. Yeah, I've seen him play down the middle occasionally.
Okay.
But anyway, he's been a player who has torn it up in Egypt. He's made 65 appearances and he's 19.
It's not bad.
And obviously he's moved for €6 million or something. I don't necessarily think he's going to start that much, but you expect with that kind of money for a player, under the age of 20 for him to have some impact in the team this year. So I'm quite excited to see, when he does play, how he gets on. It's obviously a big step up coming from the Egyptian Premier League, but he's played for what is the equivalent of the Manchester United of Egypt in Al Ahly, who are they just dominate the league. They're the team, have won the league the most amount of times. But no, he's quite tall as well, so we'll see. But he's a player who I've seen a few times. I saw him, I think it might have been at one of the random youth tournaments like years ago. He caught my eye ages ago, and it wasn't until I read his name recently. I was like, I remember seeing him play one game sometime. I did a little bit of research. But no, I'm kind of excited to see where he might slot in.
All right, yeah. I think he's probably going to be their sort of their go-to sub, isn't he? When you think about who
I don't think he's going to start immediately, but I think he's the kind of player who's obviously played a lot of first-team football. It's going to be a big step up for him. But obviously, Stoke City, they've splashed a bit of cash on him, so you'd expect him to have some kind of impact.
Yeah, there aren't many players that come from Africa that excel in the Premier League immediately. I can't think of many.
There's not many Egyptians either. Like, you think of players who have come from
Mido.
With the exception of the god that is Mido. Didn't he he managed a club in Egypt for like 1 game or 2 games and got sacked?
Mido was famously played for free because he's like Mido comes from like quite a rich family, so just played for free. He was like, I just play for free. I don't need the money. Just do whatever.
And that's how he got on teams.
Obviously, Salah came as well, didn't he?
Yeah, that was the player I was thinking of primarily when I was saying about players not having necessarily the impact people hoped and expected they might have. I feel like there's been another Egyptian join in the not so distant past who just hasn't played at all.
Yeah, is Salah Egyptian?
Salah is Egyptian.
Yeah.
You're doubting yourself now, having stated it.
I said it, but I didn't want to be wrong. Of course, El Neni is, who plays for Arsenal.
That's Well, yeah, El Neni impressed me as well, actually. So maybe Egypt's the emerging nation.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
well, what do you think for Stoke then? You said 9th, didn't you, again?
Yeah,
I'm going to go with... I'm going to say 10th. I'm going to say 10th.
Wow,
I'm breaking the mould.
So you think they'll be worse off than this season? No,
I feel like the absence of Steve Sidwell and Odawingie are going to swing it.
I don't
Shall we
feel like
move on
taking
to
this seriously,
Sunderland?
listeners. We should do, yeah. Sunderland then have lost their manager, Jack, but they do have a new one. But they have lost their manager.
Can I just say, until I read this this evening, I kind of forgot David Moyes had gone to Sunderland because they've not really signed anyone. I've not seen him in the press doing that many interviews about anything in pre-season.
No,
Stoke, they've not had a high-profile pre-season. It's going to be weird seeing him on the touchline again after a few years' absence from the Premier League.
Yeah, the outs for Sunderland. Danny Graham, God rest his soul. Steve Fletcher, Wes Brown's gone as well. Giaccherini's gone. Virgini's left too. Will Buckley's gone out on loan to Sheffield Wednesday.
You know what I like about these transfers out? It's like they've got rid of all the players who they might have had a chance of keeping if they got relegated. That's ambition.
Do you feel like quite a few teams have got rid of almost notorious deadwood? By which I mean players that have just been around for a while and now they've finally got rid of them. I've just mentioned the ones there from Sunderland. Obviously, Odawingie and Sidwell have gone from Stoke. Everton was the big one for me because we covered it last episode or whenever it was. Howard, Hibbert, Osman and Pienaar, they've gone as well. Hull got rid of Sonny Aluko. I don't know what's going on.
I mean, Hull have got rid of everyone. They've still not got a new chairman, by the way, or manager.
Adebayor, he's gone. Shamak, Hangeland, Mariappa, they all left Palace. All these players that have just been released. Where are they all? Burnley got rid of Joey Barton, Matt Gilks, Matt Taylor and Michael Duff. They're just all these players that have just disappeared. I know some of them, obviously Barton went to Rangers.
And each of you got released, so did Sessignon.
Middlesbrough released Jonathan Woodgate.
I mean, that is the most tragic tale of this season, really.
Someone stop this. We released Jose Enrique.
What you don't know is Hull are just eyeing them all up. Hull are sat in the shadows. Hull have actually signed all of these players who have been released and not told anyone, and they're just going to come out the day before the season and be like, this is our squad. They're here for revenge.
A club photo, maybe.
I've got this image.
A lot of teams are doing it.
I've got this image at the start of the game. Who'll just pretend they've got 11 players. They have a big metal door that just lifts up, and all the players who've been released by other teams are just I'm back. They do the Pogba I'm back through the shadows.
I hope so.
With a hoodie on.
Diaz Bodji has gone to... I hope I might have destroyed that name there.
Shortest ever Premier League career at a club, him. 45 seconds he appeared for at Chelsea.
Yeah, and he's got an £8 million move to Sunderland.
He has...
Come on.
I was going to say, I've heard that he played quite well in France and in Germany. And I do wonder if he's been a victim of kind of that Chelsea system where players just aren't given a chance at times.
Apparently he's he's a decent player. I think Chelsea fans wanted to see a bit more of him. Well, obviously he didn't get the opportunity to. He's been brought in then. The risk with Sunderland now is obviously with Big Sam gone to a better place. That sounds like he's died.
Is England a better place than Sunderland, right? I know technically Sunderland's in England, but I mean in terms of as a job.
Probably. Sunderland's a bit
I like the
tricky.
way you can't actually say it firmly. It's just a probably.
Yeah, probably. So David Moyes is in there. Decent. I think that's quite a nice fit, actually. I don't think that's too bad. But will they escape again? Obviously, they're quite... I wouldn't say... they were fortunate last year because Newcastle, Norwich and Villa were terrible. We've covered this before. But do we think Sunderland have got more than, say, Hull, Burnley? Are they... Or are they just going to be in the conversation again?
Can I have a rant? Can I have my rant for the episode?
Okay, today, folks, it's going to be on Sunderland. Jack's got a rant coming up.
Sorry.
Buckle up, take your seats, be comfy. Jack, take it away.
I'd like to, first off, set the kind of my stool out by saying I apologise to Sunderland fans. This isn't an attack on you, it's at your club. But Sunderland really, really piss me off. Because... they just constantly might, barely avoid relegation without showing any real ambition to go anywhere. Yeah. And it annoys me. Every year, you'll see Sunderland and Newcastle, except this year, because Newcastle actually finally went down. But every year, they kind of have this own little competition to see who can look the crappiest while still staying up. Well done, Sunderland. You won last year. You've not got that competition anymore. I thought this year, David Moyes coming in. Obviously, their rivals have gone down. Premier League, load more money. Fairly weaker batch of teams, I think it's fair to say, coming up. You'd expect a few of them maybe to bounce back down. Although, we say that every year. Maybe Sunderland this year, they're going to push on. They're going to go for lofty ambitions of finishing 14th in the Premier League. No, they've signed one player for £8 million and then just released a load of dead wood for, fees, which I'm kind of surprised about. And then a few players who are actually fairly decent for them. I want Sunderland to show some ambition. I know the Sun team's not in a situation to show ambition. Sunderland are a well-supported club. They've been in the Premier League for a number of years, making a lot of money. Yes, they've made some bad transfers in the past. This year, I want them to finish ahead of 15th, and my worry is that they'll barely scrape and avoid relegation again. And the worst thing is, they probably will avoid relegation again, and I'll be having this conversation with you next year.
Well, I mean, I think I speak for everybody, Jack, when I say we look forward to it. I guess the big thing with Sunderland is last year they got off to a dreadful start. One win in the first 12, not really good enough. And then actually, from the turn of the year, from January,
the Allardyce effect,
they only lost 4 games in 18. Which, when you think about where they finished in the end, they drew an awful lot of games. It should be said they only won 4. Won 6. Lost 4.
All I'm saying is it worked for Portugal in the Euro. True. So if Sam Allardyce wants to do that with England in the World Cup when we get there, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting second half to the season. I wonder if they can keep that going. We mentioned obviously a lot of players have been released. A lot's probably going to depend on Jermaine Defoe again. They've not bought another striker or anything.
Well, are they being rumoured to sell Kone for 18 million to Everton? Is that a deal that's still on the centre-back?
I don't know. I feel like with Sunderland, they've got quite a good first 11. Like an okay first 11, actually. But beyond that, there's problems. Their team isn't that deep, I've got to say.
The thing is, you're saying there's problems. We were saying that last year about their depth when they had Danny Graham and Stephen Fletcher there. They've released them this year.
And to be fair, we were right because they lost from their first 19 games. They only won 3 of them. So they had problems.
True.
January came round and they made some moves. But I do worry a bit for Sunderland, but I do think actually, because their starting 11 is quite good, I think they are probably going to be one of the teams in the next 20 days or so, or next 3 weeks, that make moves. I think they don't really have a choice.
Just show some ambition. 15th
what do you want from Sunderland?
15th and 20 million more spent before the end of the season.
All right, fine. I mean, hopefully we see some of the release players rock up there. So there we are. Then I'm going to go 16th for Sunderland next year. I think they'll just stay up.
I'm going to go 18th. I think they're going to go down this year.
Wow,
I've had enough.
He's had enough.
I should point out at this point, I'm voting with my heart rather than my head.
You've snapped.
I've had enough Sunderland.
Sorry, just to want to apologise, Sunderland fans, for Jack's outrage.
I liked them last year under Sam Allardyce, but I'm worried they're just going to go back to same old Sunderland with Moisey.
I kind of hope for Moisey that they, because he's had a terrible time.
If he gets sacked this year, it's going to be pretty awkward for him getting a job. We'll see him at Rochdale next year, maybe.
No, back to Preston. I think that's where he'll be.
I mean, that's a little bit much.
Right then, Swansea City, Jack, a team that I think. They've been in the Premier League too long now. I think they should start They should start the Welsh League back up. Get them in.
Invite Cardiff, TNS.
Yeah.
That's the issue. If the Welsh League was to resume, it'd just be like Scotland but worse. In terms of the deficit between the big team and the little teams.
Yeah, you're right. No, it would also. Sorry, Swansea.
Yeah, well, the solution is to bring Celtic to the Prem. No. Anyway, continue with Swansea.
Manager of Swansea, can you name him? Exactly.
Is it the guy who was there last year who no one really knew who he was?
Gwendolyn is still the manager of Swansea after Gary Monk. No one really knew what was going on for ages. He's still in the job. He got them safe last year. I do remember at one point last year, Jack, I said that Swansea would go down. And I
remember at one point I said Gary Monk needs to be sacked, and I think 3 weeks, and you and Keno protested, and then 3 weeks later he was gone.
Yes, all right, well done to you. But actually, Swansea, back end of the season, did quite well. I think their last 10 games, lost 3, won 7, and turned it around quite nicely, it has to be said. They've lost a big player in Ashley Williams. Obviously, that happened as we record today, actually. Is that going to be a bit much? From what I can tell, they haven't brought in like a natural replacement. This obviously, I don't feel like this was planned. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't something that they knew they were moving him on and getting someone else in. They brought in Van der Horn, though, I should say, from Ajax. But
the Ashley Williams deal is a puzzling one, because actually, on the face of it, £12 million for a 32-year-old is really good. And
is
under
it 12
most
or 13 million, just to clarify?
Whatever I don't think anyone knows. We'll say 12.5, meet in the middle. But I think it's undisclosed, technically, although that doesn't really have a definition, I feel like, these days.
Yeah.
But It's a weird transfer because I actually think 12 or 13 million pounds for a 32-year-old. Normally you'd applaud that, and often when you look at a centre back, you'd go, "That's a fair deal." And I don't know. I feel like it's actually a fair deal for both teams. However, I don't think it's a good deal, despite the fact I think it's a fair deal, because I actually think for Swansea they've lost their captain, they've lost a player who's been at the club a number of years, and actually they don't really need £12 million. Like, I don't think the money is an aspect of that deal that should be looked at too heavily in terms of trying to, I don't know, weigh up what it means for Swansea. Because ultimately, £12 million, yes, you can reinvest that. You're probably not going to get a player as good as Ashley Williams. But at the same time, I feel like you've done okay to get that much money for him. I don't know how you see this deal, because I do think it's one of the more, what's the word, mind-boggling kind of transfers of this window, just because I don't feel like it makes a lot of sense for Swansea to sell this guy.
Well, I read some of the quotes from Hugh Jenkins, who's obviously their chairman, and from what it sounded like, it was a bit like, "Thanks for your service, Ashley. If you want," like, Ashley Williams essentially said, like, "I want a new challenge. Please let me go." And Hugh Jenkins looks at it and says, "You know what? He's had 8 years here, but I do." Like, essentially, he served us very well. If he wants to move, then he's never asked one before. It sounds
so
like
it's the Petr Cech scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, so he's got his move. Swansea elsewhere have brought in Leroy Fer. They've brought in Mike van der Horn, who is from Ajax, who's relatively highly rated. I must say, there's 3 names that I don't actually recognise: Tyler Reid, George Byers, and Mark Aberietti from Newcastle Jets. I don't know too much about it. They've also put in Fernando Llorente, but it's the outs, Jack, that I think curious, very curious. Eder's gone, obviously the Euro hero.
He's gone to Lille. Well, they've appeared again. Anyway,
Pelosi's left, so that's another striker. Gomes has left as well, so that's 3 strikers that last year all left. And Andre Ayew's obviously gone to West Ham, as well as the Ashley Williams departure. I feel like Swansea are a little bit light now. They've got an okay squad. I think if you build a team around Gylfi Sigurdsson, you're gonna have a chance, because I think on his day he's one of the better players in the league even. But without him, like, if they say you got an injury, I feel like they're a little bit thin on the ground currently.
Leon Britton to come in, Regista in the making.
Is that what you're hoping for?
It's funny you should note this, because with Swansea, I feel like they're a bit of a bizarre team. I don't hear there aren't that many. I don't want to say there's not many Swansea fans around, but I don't know many. So I actually went to the one, the only Chris Orme, fan of the show, friend of the show, and I asked him what he thought his Swansea lineup would be yesterday. But I do actually think it's quite interesting, because I look through the team. It's a little bit like the Sunderland scenario, where I actually think you look at their starting 11 kind of lined up, it doesn't actually look that bad. It's just a case of what lies beyond it. So Chris's starting 11 was Fabianski, Kingsley, Amat, Fernandez and Norton at the back. In centre mid, Key and Jack Cork. Now, I don't know if that's a Premier League centre mid partnership, but they've got Leon Britton and Leroy Fer, who you mentioned they brought in. Leroy Fer, I think, has a bit of a point to prove this year. They've got Sigurdsson and as backup Fulton, who I don't think Sigurdsson's a player they can really replace anyway, whoever they brought in. And then out wide, they've got Montero, Dyer and Routledge, and then, they've got Llorente and Borgia as kind of the 2 up front. Yeah. I'm just a little bit worried. I look through that team and I quite like Swansea, and they always seem to get a lot out of not a lot. But I do feel like they're a bit kind of rolling the dice here and hoping that Llorente kind of comes off a bit like how Michu did a few years ago now. Particularly with the amount of strikers they've sold. Obviously, Swansea got 1 good year out of Michu, and I feel like Llorente kind of comes in perhaps with a little bit more in the way of expectation, because, of course, he's been around Europe a little bit more at some fairly big clubs.
He's been in the wilderness since Bilbao, I would say. He's went to Juve, did okay, but wasn't very well loved at Juve. I think he played with Tevez at Juve, and Tevez didn't like him at all in terms of an actual partner. And as I say, in the last few years, didn't really feature at all. Last year, went to Sevilla, scored 4 goals in 23 league starts or league appearances. Not great. And we're talking about a player that a few years ago, Jack, he's got 24 Spain caps. Like, he was in that team that was, the team that we raved about for years. I think from 2008 to 2012, he played for them 21 times. So he was obviously part of that team. In 2010, he even scored 5 goals for them. So, as I say, in the last 5 years, of course, he's a bit older now, 31. But he's fallen off a little bit. And with the departures at Swansea in terms of strikers, he's going to have to score. Like, there's going to be pressure on him because of the expectation of who he is. But in terms of Swansea actually surviving in the Premier League this year, he's going to have to score. You lose your leader. To me, I think the Williams transfer, you kind of said it there, They didn't need to sell him, and now they have sold him. They can't replace him for the same amount of money, so they're going to have to spend more. They're going to have to bring someone else in. I don't know how many leaders now exist in that Swansea team, and apart from Gylfi Sigurdsson, who I assume is probably one of their only ones, I don't think you're going to get that same kind of leadership from a player like Wayne Routledge, for example, or from Montero, or maybe even Llorente. I don't look at Llorente and think leader.
I do feel like this Premier League season, and particularly the next month, really, is going to be really, really interesting, because I think there's a lot of teams in the Premier League right now who have sold more than they've bought. And obviously we hear all this money all this talk about the money in the Premier League. If that's the case and teams are serious about their Premier League status, I expect to see some pretty big transfers be going through. Obviously the John Stones one and Ashley Williams ones and the Pogba ones have gone in, now within a week of the season. I do feel like there's going to be a lot more kind of similar deals, and it really wouldn't surprise me if we see the record smashed, for transfer money exchanged in the last month or whatever.
Yeah, I'll come on to the sort of transfer business in a minute. But do you think, Swansea start, right, is Burnley, Hull and Leicester. Do you think Swansea are one of those teams now? I do think, from doing these previews, there are a few teams thinking this way, that they're trimming their squad in a similar way to the champions of last year. Leicester had a very settled squad. They were fortunate with injuries, not to pick any up, but that could well be from design. We don't really know. Maybe they had a whole system to make sure these players didn't get injured.
Maybe they had Jesus healing any of them that got injured. Their physio, their physio does have healing powers.
35 minutes in, we nearly got there. Probably not that. But you know what I mean? They might be thinking, look, if we can get a settled team and we can just trust that team to play every week and have most of that squad know that they're going to be part of that team, then that can do a lot for team morale. But I do think losing key players like AU and Williams and a couple of other strikers who obviously wanted moves, I think we should make that point, that those players obviously wanted to move on and go somewhere else, otherwise Swansea probably wouldn't have let them go. But as I say, first 4 games of the season, Burnley, Hull, Leicester and Chelsea. If you start badly against Burnley and Hull, although Swansea will beat Hull because 8 points, they've got Leicester and Chelsea after that, and that, I don't know, first few games, they're going to know where they stand.
It's going to set the tone for the season, I think it's fair to say.
I'll tell you what, that opening game against Burnley is massive, because if Swansea don't win that match, then there'll be a few players looking around going, who's dragging us out of this? I don't know. But as I said, I'll come on to it, but transfer-wise, they're going to have to make moves. They're another side, much like Southampton, in my opinion, and Sunderland, and maybe Stoke to a degree. We talked about the striker for them, who are going to have to make moves. And they've got money now, and teams know they've got money. They've got about probably 30 million to spend. They've not spent a great deal bringing players in. So I think, as I say, we're recording on the 10th of August. They may well bring a lot more.
I do feel like that is the problem with our Premier League previews at the moment. Is I fear that by the end of the transfer window, obviously a few game weeks in, it's just going to have different teams.
Well, yeah, I think we'll probably do a transfer roundup podcast towards the end of the window. But you can't do this in September because we'll know who started well. So
do it in May. I think Leicester will win the league.
Yeah, well done you. Right, does that wrap us up? Any more you'd like to say on any of the things there?
I'd like to issue a public apology for the first episode of the podcast. If you watched it on YouTube, because Callum was coming out of one ear. The art for the ForTheFans podcast had a French flag in the background still.
We're returning back.
Pre-season. This is our pre-season. We're still fine-tuning things, tinkering with our tactics. That first episode was the game against the reserves behind closed doors, but we let you guys in. And hopefully they'll be getting better.
Indeed. We've had a few requests. Will the podcast be on SoundCloud? Next week, next Monday, it's probably going to be our first show. And Callum Keno, I just want everyone to know, the responsibility is fully on his shoulders, Jack, right? He's promised this.
Yeah. He was the one who set up the stall and said SoundCloud it. So if it's not there, tweet at him.
He is putting it on. Okay, he's putting it on SoundCloud. So the
best thing is he isn't here for this week's show, and he never watches until the end.
So he doesn't know that. But Keno, this is your responsibility, mate. So if it doesn't, basically what me and Jack are saying is that if it doesn't end up on SoundCloud, it's literally not our fault.
And if he says, "Oh, but it wasn't my responsibility, I didn't know,"
it is.
We told him here, and then we'll go. We said in the 4th preview show, it's your responsibility, and he'll go, "Oh, I didn't hear that," and I'll say, "Tough."
Yeah. But anyway, thank you for listening. Thanks for listening, Kino, as well as everyone else. I do appreciate it. If you've watched it on YouTube, do find the like button and click it. The first few shows have done quite well, so yeah, keep that up. We're not too far from 3,000 subscribers, I don't think, Jack.
We hit 100,000 podcast views on YouTube as well this week.
Did we really? We're also in the iTunes top 50 for podcasts again, so welcome back us to the iTunes.
Oh, if you're listening on iTunes, of course, leave a rating. Do it.
Yes, we'll read some of the best ones out next week, I think. Why not? And as ever, leave your comments and your thoughts on the teams that we've mentioned here today. We're also on Twitter at ForTheFans Show. You can follow us personally as well at Jackzia, at Dr. Benji. Why not? You'll see it on the Twitter. And yeah, subscribe to the channel for more podcast fun this season. Jack, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
And with love, with care from me, Dr. Benji. Until next time, from us for the fans. Goodbye. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Make sure you're not using the French.
It's a sculpture of a goal, Benji. It's perfection.
Kino, I think you're going to have to be calling for an oxygen mask over here, my friend.